Darwin says that species that survive are not the strongest or the biggest, but he says the ones that are the fittest. It's survival of the fittest. And I think that applies to investments big time.
Have you learned anything from Darwin about how to avoid ruin and compound capital in investing?
There's a wonderful book written by a great investor called Polak Prasad called What I Learned from Darwin About Investing. And it's one of the investment books I ever read. It's a wonderful book. And in fact, I learned a lot from Polak. And Polak is an interesting guy. He lives in Singapore and he runs a fund. It's, I think, about 5 billion or so. I don't think they're taking new capital in. He's posted his entire portfolio on their homepage. And basically, there's no movement in that portfolio. If they buy a company, they're married to the company. They might do 5 years of research before they buy a company. But once they buy the company, they're pretty much all in forever. So it's a very wonderful framework where they think of themselves as owners of these businesses. And these are businesses with truly exceptional corporate governance, very well-run businesses. They can be very basic businesses, but they're really well-run. So I think Darwin says that species that survive are not the strongest or the biggest, but he says the ones that are the fittest. It's survival of the fittest. And I think that applies to investments big time. If you look at a company like, let's say you look at a company like Microsoft, I mean, evolution that business has gone through over the last 6 decades or whatever they've been around is unbelievable. They've continuously reinvented themselves. And each time they've reinvented, I mean, Microsoft was threatened with extinction so many times. And if they had not zigzagged, they would have gone extinct like everyone else did. That's an example of a business that's a very fit business. Even though it was a big business, what was important was the fitness of the business. When we look at business like Walmart, for example, that's also a very fit business because they've been so fanatical about delivering value to their customers and efficiencies and taking cost out of the system and all of that, that they've taken out everyone and, built their footprint. So yes, we want to have the fittest businesses. And one of the definitions of fitness is lack of leverage. So when you look at these businesses, you want to see management teams that have the ability to zigzag. And you have a capital structure that allows you the freedom to zigzag. And so I think, there's a lot of things that you can learn from Darwin that you can apply in the corporate world, which would be helpful. One of the lessons that took me many decades to learn is not to sell a good company or great company when it's fairly priced or even overpriced. I was always trying to sell things at 90% of fair value. And that was a very bad framework to have because we don't know what actual fair value is for a great business. Only when it gets egregiously overpriced, like there's no way you can justify it, is when you can consider exiting the business. True great compounders are few and far between. They are going to end up in your portfolio. And your job when it ends up in your portfolio is not to be trigger happy. And so the reality of investing is that this is a very forgiving business. So let's say, for example, there's some controversy whether Walmart was part of the Nifty 50 or not in the 1970s, right? Let's take the case it was part of the Nifty 50. It was 2% allocation to Walmart out of 50 stocks. And let's say the other 49 stocks went to zero. So we made $100,000 bet in 1970 or whatever, or 1972, and 98,000 of that has gone to zero. All the companies that were there, which some of them were very good companies like McDonald's and Coke and all of that, let's say they all went to zero. And you only had the 2% that you invested in Walmart. If you carried that till today, you blew out the S&P. So you blew out the S&P with 98% error rate, holding on to just one business, because that one business outperformed the S&P by so much that it outperformed significantly. There's a very strong asymmetry here where the winners can be truly spectacular winners. So it's not so much that if you hold on to 5 companies, that it may have been better to sell 3 of them. You don't need to be optimized. You own all 5, and that allows you to own the 1 or 2 that just go spectacular. So the important thing is that not to get cute. So for example, if you look at our Wagons fund, we have the Constellation businesses in there, the Mark Leonard Constellation businesses. they have a good future. I have no crystal ball that tells me what those companies look like 10 or 20 years from now. But I want to let them run. We have the coal companies. I also don't know what those look like 10, 20 years from now. We want to let those run too. It looks favorable. We want to let them run. So we have some Turkish bets in there too, like Resas, etc. We want to let them run. And I think that when you put enough of these things which have great characteristics, the world is a messy place. Things will come from left field. We don't know what happens to these different companies at what point, but it's almost inconceivable that all of them fall apart, that Constellation falls apart and the coal bets part fall apart and Turkey falls apart and, our offshore drillers fall apart. Everything falls apart. That's just, in fact, I just can't see that. I can see that maybe one or two of them might have some issues, but I don't see it across the board. So we don't need to be right to the fourth decimal. We also don't need to know which one of these is going to be the one. They're all there. Let them all run. Let them go do their thing. We just watch in the sidelines, see what happens. And that's it.